A people need to first learn the truth of their plight and condition in order to develop the strategies that are necessary to liberate themselves. And what oppressive forces don't want Black people ever gaining that truth? The following is a quote from a 1832 speech presented before the founding fathers Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln by Delegate Henry Berry, a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. Berry said that we have as far as possible closed every avenue by which the light of truth may enter the minds of the Negro. If we could extinguish their capacity to see any light of truth, our work will be complete. They would then be on the level of the beasts of the field, and we then should be safe, and we can then rule over them forever. They don't want us to ever gain a true understanding of what they've done to us and what it continually does to us in order to facilitate their ongoing long-term oppression of us. It's why white oppressive forces have spread so much disinformation into the Black communities to prevent us from gaining the truth. It's also why whenever we attempt sharing any Black liberating information amongst ourselves on social media, Facebook blocks it, Twitter deletes it, Google hides it, YouTube bans it, the media censors it, and the government forbids it. They know that once we've gained a clear understanding of our plighted condition, we'll then be able to develop the proper kind of strategies that are necessary to liberate ourselves. Fortunately, throughout history, our ancestors have always provided us with those that given the spiritual insight and innate ability to see through the oppressor's lies and recognize their oppressive tactics. Those of us that are blessed with this gift must teach the truth of our plighted condition. The ancestors demand this of us. Those that know these truths must teach. African proverb. Unlike at the conclusion of World War II, when the less than 12-year Jewish Holocaust came to an end, when the U.S. government and the UN contributed massive financial support to rebuild their lives, there was no moral obligation to do the same for Africans. Although the African Holocaust lasted hundreds of years longer and resulted in millions of more deaths and more greatly decimated the African culture, when slavery was abolished, America, Great Britain, and the many other white nations that benefit from their brutal exploitation of Africa felt no moral obligation to restore the lives of Africans, their culture, our culture. They instead focused on their own self-interest. To protect these white societies from a pending unified Black retribution, especially given the fact that the white society's ongoing mistreatment of Black people continues and the exploitation of Africa's natural resources also continues indefinitely, white social scientists were secretly hired to socialize the minds of Black people. Socialize is when the oppressors misuses their monopoly over information that are fed into the collective minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the oppressors. This isn't some feeble-minded conspiracy theory. Throughout history, those nations that were brutally oppressive, fearing eventual retributions from the oppressed, have always socialized the minds of the oppressed to think in ways that ensures that the oppressed never seek retribution against the oppressors. Here's a reason why the socializing of Black people is deemed as necessary. While oppressors, through their military strength, can brutally invade and enslave a people, they, however, cannot win their loyalty or sustain peace with them for long unless their minds have been socialized to prevent them from unifying and seeking retribution against their oppressors. Whenever people are oppressed for long durations, their collective aggressions against their oppressors will continue to grow until acts of massive rebellion and retribution becomes inevitable. This is the inherent response of the human mind when people are oppressed for long durations. To prevent these pending acts of rebellion, the minds of the oppressed must be socialized. This is what white oppressive forces have done to black people. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of black people that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. It's how the white society protects itself from massive unified black retribution. The Bible was in fact the first propaganda literature used to socialize black people. Critically think and look at the facts. The early white Christians' conversions of Africans into their religion had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with saving the souls of Africans so that Africans may join them in heaven during the afterlife. This is an irrefutable fact because the early white Christians literally believed that Africans weren't humans, that Africans had no souls, and they believed that heaven was for whites only. In fact, the early white Christians believed that the thought of an African entering heaven was as ridiculous as a dog doing so. This is an absolute fact. When we logically look at the facts as they truly were, we can say with great certainty that the white enslavers' conversion of Africans into their religion had absolutely nothing to do with saving the souls of Africans. There was another self-serving reason why they put their time and energy into teaching Christianity to a people they otherwise treated so brutally. The self-serving reason was to indoctrinate the belief of a white God into their subconscious minds. Indoctrinating the belief of a white God into the subconscious minds of black people creates a profound adoration towards whiteness that is then subconsciously transferred and transposed upon white people. This made the Africans feeling more subservient towards whites and more compliant with dominance over their lives. Therefore, made the Africans into better slaves for the white people. And it also aided in the colonization of Africa. The Bible has remained a very effective tool used for controlling generations of people. Through Christianity, millions of black people have been brainwashed to believe that all the wrongs that the white society have done to us throughout history have been washed away clean by the blood of a fictional white Jesus. Note, the white society never actually repented nor even apologized for the evil deeds committed against black people throughout history. They merely convert black people into Christians and says, as good Christians, we must forgive them as the Bible dictates. Black people were forced to be Christians, and then the Christian doctrine compelled us to forgive the white society for the brutalities inflicted upon us. It says that's what being a good Christian is. Furthermore, by teaching black people that a white God sent down his white son to die for our souls, this literally makes millions of black people feel indebted to the white society. So now we feel indebted to those that we should be resenting. Christianity has proven itself as being one of the most successful propaganda tools used for socializing the minds of black people. Today, many black people attempt to defend their belief in the Bible by insisting that Christianity was originally practiced in Ethiopia. However, this is absolutely untrue. The fact is that Christianity did not become the official religion of Ethiopia until the reign of King Ezana in the year 341 AD. That's 16 years after Romans created the false religion. The Bible was written by Romans, okay? It was written by Constantine, the Roman emperor, and the councils of bishops in the year 325 AD. The Romans were an immoral society that routinely engaged in massive orgies, pedophilia, wife swapping, incest, bestiality, and death sports. They continued these practices even after writing the Bible. The Roman Emperor Constantine, as I mentioned earlier, who was in charge of writing the Bible, he himself refused to convert into a Christian. Even on his deathbed, he refused to do so because he knew it was a work of fiction. The Bible was also brutally beaten into the minds of our ancestors by those who raped them, maimed them, enslaved them, tortured and murdered them. This is not the way God would be introduced to a people. These noted facts, combined with the fact that the Bible strongly condones slavery, totally disqualifies it from containing the true words of God. Moreover, a history A fact that's remained consistent throughout history is that the oppressors never provide liberating information to those they are oppressing. They never have. To make liberating information readily available to the oppressed would be diametrically against the interests of the oppressors. Therefore, the belief that a Bible that the white society has made readily available to countless millions of black people provides the path to our salvation and liberation is a profound absurdity. You know, the reason why there's rarely ever any resolve whenever presenting these types of common sense thinking facts to black Christians is because the conscious person presents documented facts, critical thinking, reasoning, and common sense. But black Christians have been taught to stand by blind faith, even when the abundance of evidence is to the contrary. Yes, this sounds very admirable, standing on blind faith, but it's actually imprisons the mind. More of it turns the black person into a warden of his or her own psychological prison. To try to teach the truth about the falsehood of Christianity to people that have renounced the use of reason, facts, and common sense is literally like trying to feed medicine to the dead. Think. The human brain is the world's greatest computer because it's self-aware, self-formulating, self-learning, and can even reprogram itself. Why would God implant such great abilities into our head and then give us religion that discourages intelligent critical thinking in exchange for blind, dumb faith? Its capabilities are a direct contradiction of the limits that religion imposes upon the brain. The Bible is false knowledge because any book that condones slavery written by history's most ungodly group of people is inherently disqualified from containing the true words of God. They've got our people so mentally enslaved that now stating facts literally offends millions. They fool us, now we fool ourselves. We must elevate our minds above a biblical fairy tale and instead learn the truth of our plight and condition. The Bible is, in fact, the first propaganda literature used to socialize Africans. In 1968, white social scientists determined that the socializing of black people needed to be reinforced unrelentingly beyond just the Bible. It's no strange occurrence that many black people are now self-loathing, perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies, and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history to the contrary. It's always by deliberate design whenever the oppressed start thinking exactly as their oppressors wants them to think. These noted mindset that exists among far too many black people that clearly benefits the white society was deliberately ingrained into the collective minds of many black people through the white society's monopoly over information that we receive, which allows them to control what we believe. The white society are the programmers of most of the information that black people receives and believes. It's been this way for so long that most black people have normalized it, and therefore cannot see what's being done to us. Therefore can't see the mental change. Now, the reason for this ongoing socializing of black people begins in the 1960s. During the 1960s, African Americans' unified protest against the U.S. system of white supremacy was unprecedented. African Americans confronted it on all fronts. It was confronted through civil disobedient tactics, militant means, nonviolent protests, with black lawyers pleading for equality within America's highest Supreme Court. African Americans' unified protests demonstrated during the 60s still remains unrivaled by any other group in U.S. history. However, African Americans had unknowingly proved themselves as being the greatest threat against the U.S. system of white supremacy. In the face of such unprecedented black protests, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover said that the unification of the American Negro was the greatest threat against the nation. To remedy what was then called the Negro problem, in 1967, President Lyndon Johnson put together a committee called the Kerner Commission. Their assignment was to study the Negro problem, find the cause of the problem, and then develop a solution. In 1968, white social scientists determined that decade's unprecedented unified black protest was caused by an elevated and unifying black collective self-esteem brought on by the emergence of the Black Pride movement. They also determined that Black people collective aggressions toward the white society had swelled to a point where it produced the response they got. They determined that they could subdue Black unified protests by keeping the collective aggressions of Black people very low and keeping our collective aggression shifted away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. They decided this could be achieved by deploying propaganda that keeps Black people believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves. Presently, all narratives about Black people are written exclusively by white people. Black people aren't able to refute nor fact check anything that the white society says about us. Whatever the white society says about Black people is automatically deemed as being factual. This unfair scenario allows white oppressive forces to easily negatively shape how Black people perceive ourselves collectively. This is a psychological warfare that keeps us believing the worst of ourselves. People are easily controlled by the narratives they routinely receive about themselves. If people are constantly inundated with positive narratives about themselves, this raises their collective self-esteem and it unifies them. However, if people are constantly bombarded with fraudulent negative information about themselves, the exact opposite happens. This lowers the self-esteem. It creates self-hatred, disunity, which attacks the core foundation what bonds a people. And then you remove a people's self-love and unity, and they can then be ruled over forever. This latter example is precisely what white oppressive forces are doing to Black people. Keeping us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves is now how the white society now prevents us from unifying against them. This nefarious psychological warfare tactic works by tapping into the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of Black people. To control a people, you must negatively control what they think about themselves collectively. Once they've been made ashamed of themselves collectively, you no longer need change to hold them. That was stated by Dr. John Henry Clark. Now, here's a basic example of how this psychological warfare tactic actually works. Imagine that a crew was out at sea aboard their very own well-functioning ship, and that their ship was being followed by a second ship, and a second ship constantly broadcasting derogatory messages toward that first crew, the first ship's crew. Such messages telling them that their ship was lesser, not seaworthy, perhaps slowly sinking, or that their crew was somehow incompetent. With time, the crew, constantly receiving negative, derogatory messages about themselves, being unable to refute nor confirm them, will grow weary, paranoid, and will eventually come to accept those negative narratives about themselves. They will internalize them. This will eventually cause the crew to become distrustful of each other, doubt each other, resentful towards each other. The taunted crew may even become so besieged by deep feelings of inadequacy and resentment, towards their fellow crew members, that many will jump into the sea and attempt to swim toward the taunting ship, now believing that the taunting ship is better than their own ship, trying to separate themselves from the other crew member, even if their ship was in fact better. This entire process was accomplished by constantly inundating the ship's crew with negative, demoralizing disinformation about themselves. Its weapon was the negative messages and the way that it negatively affected the targeted crew. It's a process with the objective to erode the morale of a targeted population through constant demoralization. By destroying their morale, it can even prevent their will to fight. It's very effective. No group can be constantly inundated with negative, demoralizing disinformation about themselves and not suffer some adverse effect. Within a real-world setting, this same demoralized, divide and rule psychological warfare tactic is what's being deployed against Black people by white oppressive forces through their monopoly over information and media images that we receive. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It's actually a Black racially demoralizing, divide and rule psychological warfare campaign. Demoralized divide, and rule is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hate and division amongst them. There are three ways to effectively manipulate a people: by what they're taught, by what they see, and by what they hear. Because the white society controls all Black people's societal narratives and Black people's mainstream media images that Black people repetitively receive, these facts allows white oppressive forces to shrewdly manipulate Black people to develop self-contemptuous thoughts about ourselves without most of us even realizing what's being done to us. This manipulation process is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent and worst narratives about ourselves. Within this propaganda campaign, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing and Black devaluing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of Black people without being challenged nor counterbalanced by an equal amount of Black positive racially affirming information. It conveys a subliminal message that Black people are now our own worst enemies and that we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that Black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This propaganda system is extremely effective because when Black people are constantly presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. Its weapon is the demoralizing message that it carries and the way that it adversely affects Black people in terms of our behavior. You know, when we're watching TV, we feel like we're being publicly humiliated as well as personally humiliated, which is why we can't get our act together. With time, being unable to refute the constant negative information about ourselves, many Black people eventually comes to accept it. Many Black people then experience profound feelings of humiliation. We say, damn it, why can't we get our act together? This unrelenting humiliation causes many Black people to become so demoralized and divided. And we start making negative generalization about our own people that we ourselves cannot actually confirm. In the most extreme cases, many Black people even attempt to disassociate ourselves from other Black people. Psychologists call this disassociation. It's a defense mechanism that evolves to put a distance between ourselves and from the pain. Some will make it their personal mission to go out of their way to try to show white people that we're not all bad. So instead of resenting them, we're trying to win their approval. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving people certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation toward an implied objective. The human mind is also like a computer, in that no matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information fed into it. If it's possible to control the input into the human mind, then no matter how intelligent a person may be, it's entirely possible to control what the person will believe. The white society exploits its monopoly over information to shape our minds in ways that serve their interests. You know, it doesn't matter if the information presented is untrue. Most Black people will respond according to it because they've all been given the same disinformation about ourselves. Those Black people that do not critically think and question the validity of all information they receive from the white society are the ones that become self-hating, self-loathing, and mentally enslaved by the white society, never noticing their mental change. Whenever Black people said that we need to stop killing each other at the highest rate, our Black people had love for each other, they're not critically thinking. Because in reality, they don't know for certain that these narratives about Black people are true. Those narratives come exclusively from white people who have never earned the credibility to exclusively control Black narratives. They've been telling lies about us forever. The white society writes all Black people's narratives. They literally owns our interpretation of ourselves. And their power over us is made greater when they keep us believing in frauds and worse about themselves. So naturally, they're going to keep us thinking in ways that aids them in maintaining their dominance over us. Because we have no true leaders, this is not being addressed. They keep us believing the frauds and worse about ourselves because it demoralizes us, divides us. Black people, we must start critically thinking. We must be critically thinking in order to liberate ourselves. As I said, it's by design. You know, they have all this propaganda, they have all this negative information in our minds. Come on now, wake up. Throughout history, the oppressor's depiction of the oppressed has never been a true one. They've always negatively distorted it to serve their oppressors' agendas, negative agendas. This system of control prevents Black people from unifying against the white society by keeping our collective self-esteem low and our aggression shifted towards ourselves. It's how they now control us. It's never been a silly slave syndrome myth. But brothers and sisters, we have to wake up. The problem is too many Black people have been brainwashed to forget the true historical relationship shared between our racial group and the white society. Therefore, most have forgotten that the white society's depiction of Black people has never been a true one throughout history. It has always been negatively distorted to serve the white society's racist agendas against Black people. During slavery, they said that they perpetuated the image that we love being enslaved. When they went and invaded Africa, they perpetuated the image of us that we were savages and therefore we were better off being invaded. They've always distorted our narrative to serve their agendas. But they brainwash us to forget this. So now we're looking at the narrative they make about us and we're accepting them as true. The white society has never earned the blind trust of Black people. They merely brainwash you to think that they've earned it. And now we're receiving information from the white society about us. And we interact with each other based upon those information. A Black woman sees something that says Black men are the sorriest. And she's interacting with a Black man and says, you know, Black men, you are sorry. Black men, gotta get your act together. Based upon the narrative from the white society. The Black man receives the narrative saying that white women are more supportive than Black women. And the Black man looks at a woman, his sister says, hey, you need to get your act together. White women, I'm outdoing you. We function based upon the narrative that the white society creates. This psychological warfare works so well, in fact, that not only makes Black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it in fact makes us even prefer it. It is at the root of both the profound feelings of self-hatred among Black people, as well as the false feeling of superiority many whites have by the negative propaganda feeding into our society, denigrating us and exalting them. It is really time for us to wake up. Now, I know some of you, your minds are lost. I know some of you, you're probably hating me for telling you the truth. You know, sometimes a fruit falls from a tree and it falls so hard and fast and so hard and it rolls so far away from the roots that you're no longer able to return the fruit back to the tree. The fall and the damage is totally changed the fruit and it's no longer the tree. So I understand that there are Black people who are watching right now and they're insisting on believing in those idiotic ideologies, you know, and they're attacking me looking at this. But this video is for those who have not rolled so far away from the tree, those who still have their intelligent, critical thinking mind, those whose minds have not been so totally brainwashed, so colonized and socialized by the white society that they're understanding the truth of what I'm saying. I ask you to share the truth. They're heavily shadow banning all of my content, but I need you to share. You know, I rarely say, hey, please like and subscribe. I don't say that, but I need you to start sharing. Share the information. That's how we liberate ourselves. We don't liberate ourselves by hoarding, liberating truth. We liberate ourselves collectively by sharing it. One love and peace, brothers and sisters. One love and peace.